Let's talk about the house. Our body is a container. Our house is a container. Now, I've moved a lot ever since I was a little girl after my father passed, and we have lived in various apartments, and I have recently discovered a method in how we can clear the dimensions of that house. So when I mean dimensions of that house is while meditating in this home that I am right now, through deep meditation, I was able to cross through many dimensions of this home. For example, many people have lived in this home. But there's one particular lady that has lived in this home for about a decade or so. So in her dimension, I was connecting to through the house. So a house, we talk about haunted house, it is holding dimensions of that house. So, for example, there is a home back where I'm from, and it has 3 generations living in that house. Okay, so the grandparents, the uncle, aunt, and then the children. So we have 3 dimensions of consciousness living in the same container. Okay, and there's a lot of people out there like that. So there's nothing wrong with this, okay? But when it becomes haunted in the traditional sense, where there's a lot of stagnation going on, trapped energy. Okay, we all know this. It's just something feels like there's lurking around, and it feels kind of stagnant or trapped, okay, where we start to hear echoes from those dimensions. And that's kind of what when we're hearing like whispers or hearing like voices, it's echoing from that other dimension that happened in that house. So haunting, let's say in that other dimension before you moved into that house, it could even be like in the, this 1700, the 1800, something like a civil war. Maybe that house, there was some sort of civil war going on, or it could even be a trauma happened in that house. The echo, whatever leaves impact, trauma leaves impact. It echoes throughout the other dimensions of that house. Okay, so when you see like I'm hearing like whispers, it's because it's echoing through that dimension that it was first created, that trauma. Okay, so as sovereign beings, okay, how we transmutate, okay, we talk about elevating that trauma, basically freeing the entrapped energy. And usually energy gets kind of trapped through judgment and through shame. These are what we call darker realities, destructive realities, and energy dimensions can get caught in that destructive reality where it's constantly relaying through the same trauma. It could be even relaying through the same civil war or through the same judgment or the hate crime or the injustice is relaying through the same thing, just like very similar, identical to a thought pattern. A thought pattern we can relay through. It's creative. It can be very constructive, such as a good habit you do daily to really, solidify, fortify that, that momentum of a positive, good habit. But we also have destructive relays or, patterns where we are constantly deconstructing ourselves. We're constantly sabotaging ourselves. We know these things. So we have creative reality, we have destructive reality. Creative reality is different from destructive reality because it is through command and through intention in that creative reality that is able to create space. It's able to open up space. Well, destructive reality we think of the echo in a dimension of like a civil war where it's just kind of replaying again and again that trauma of that is it kind of creates this enclosed area, like we're enclosing ourselves, boxing ourselves in. That's when we talk about limitation. Okay, so we have this great expansion and we have this great contraction, we have this great spaciousness, and then we have also this great we call enclosed. about polarity on this planet. It's kind of like a cosmic sort of governing law that is not just our planet. So why feng shui, okay, is absolutely important to any house you're in. Either you just build it from the ground up, or you living in a house like an apartment that many people have lived in, or, you know, a very old house, whatever it is. Feng shui, we can see it as the Eastern tradition where, you know, there's an actual practice of it. There's principles, there's kind of laws to it. But my sort of method of feng shui incorporates mantras. Okay, mantras as well as just imagery. So I'm a great visualizer, and I believe visualization really helps us to really repattern and reconstruct the mind, okay, through visualization. And the home is a container, and it's the best thing that we can do to really put into our conscious as well as our subconscious a constructive relay of like a command or an intention that we want to kind of gain momentum in, okay? So, for example, you know, in this house where I said there's 3 generations living in back home, the reason in this house there's a lot of kind of, you know, bad luck in this house, okay? A lot of like illness kind of going on, and there's like sort of just, you know, a lot of just negative energy, okay? Like tension, friction, you know, irritation, all of that kind of stuff. So our body, this human container, we have a navel. That's our second brain. That's our will. So whenever we go and I gotta sage the negative energy or whatever, you know, I'm feeling some bad mojo from the party that I just got back, or I went downtown and I'm like, woo, there's some creepy energy going on down there. You know, you sage it. The sage is an intention, it's a command behind that. So we may not be consciously commanding or setting intention of, you know, I command kind of thing, but just through the practice of the sage, we are using our navel to push that energy out. So whenever we are trying to deconstruct or, you know, even reconstruct anything, it's coming from our navel. Okay, our navel, which is below the belly button. It's our will. So when we talk about anything, making any quantum leaps, crossing through any sort of dimensional reality from, you know, our destructive shadow side to our, you know, our creative, visionary side, it requires us to literally create a bridge. And that is the push of the navel, because that's our impact. So whenever we experience a trauma, usually it's like the trauma we hold is in our navel or in our lower chakras. Okay, but when we hold a lot of trauma in our lower chakras area, it affects the entire system of us. So we find ourselves not really like having clarity or sense of peace, or feeling safe, or feeling like kind of protected or secure within our reality, is because we kind of hold on to the trauma within our navel. Okay, so when we have, let's say, you know, we're living in a house with 3 generations, and just many of these generations are living what we call dwelling in, you could say, unrealized potential. Okay, what does that look like? There's not much growth, you know? Realized potential is nutrients. Like out there in the soil, you know, you compost the soil so that when you plant the seed, it can grow to its fullest potential. It can be realized. A seed cannot be realized if there's no nutrients, if the soil is kind of dry, or it's, you know, bleak or stark, that kind of thing. And then the sunlight is the soulfulness. Sunlight is the soul, and the soul is what rises the tree into, you know, establishing branches, and it is growing. So when we have, let's say we're in a house where there's, you know, generations, and there's no nutrients, there's no soulfulness, you know, that house, that container it has no soil, fertile soil, and it has no sunlight. And without, you know, fertile soil or sunlight, we're in that container, like a plant. You know, you're putting the plant, you know, the seed in the pot and in the dark corner with, you know, some just soil that's dried up or something like that. It won't grow, you know? And when we're not growing, we're not realizing our potential, or we have, you know, we're in a house where, you know, many generations or many dimensions of people living in that house did not realize their potential. Okay. Or they could have been in a relay with themselves of like emotional depression, or could have been like illness, like literally they're in like an illness. A house is a container. It contains that energy into itself. So if we're living in that situation, we kind of can feel it. We can feel the residue. And that's what I talk about, like hauntings is just residue from that dimensional reality where, you know, somebody hung themselves or got hung or lynched or whatever went down in that particular haunting. So we do not need to fear such things. The reason we fear is because our navel is weak. That's why we fear, you know, the whispering and you know, the bad mojo in the house, or, you know, the stagnancy, because stagnancy without will is our greatest nightmare. You know, stagnancy without will is our greatest nightmare because it doesn't move anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. So when we talk about the will is a mantra I use to really purify my body, to like really, you know, clear out anything I have in my container that it's just getting stale. It's getting kind of, you know, it just needs to go. You know, it's enclosing me in a limitation. It's closing me in a destructive pattern, a habit, an addiction. What mantra I use for my body as well as for my house environment is Ekonkar Satnam Siri Wahe Guru. Okay, the Maul mantra. So when we use Ekonkar, we are literally activating the navel. We are pulling up the Mula Bandha. We're rising into the heart, we're rising into the throat, we're rising into the third eye, the top of the head, all the way out. So I'm going to briefly show you one round of it. Okay, so I pull up, you could say the sex organ, the rectum, kind of pull up the navel, pull in as though you're pulling it in. And talk about the first chakra, Ong, O-N-G, which we're moving into the second chakra, Ong, Kar, getting into the second chakra. We're still like pulling up, Ong, Kar, chin is tucked in. Sut, which is solar plexus, Sut. So you're literally like pulling, Sut. You feel like Sut. You're pulling it up and in. Sut. Nam, the heart, Nam. Okay. Suri. Okay, which you kind of like let the energy drop a little bit. Okay, so we're not pulling up. Siri, the throat. Wa, the third eye. Hey, top of the head. Guru, like magnetic field, getting into the aura. So one round. Ik, Ong, Gar, Sut, Nam, Suri, Wa, He, Guru. Okay, so you can like hold it out. I just did kind of one quick round of it to kind of show you what I do. And this is also good at really amplifying the navel. Okay, so we're really anchoring ourselves in that navel a lot of times through that ek, Onkar, okay, then Satnam, and really amplifying the heart, you know, amplifying our entire resonance so that when we are, our container is pretty solid and our container has an impact. So on our, you could say on our environment. But when we're in a house has its own resonance as well. So what is within is without, and kind of what is without, we know through kind of, epigenetics, we're affected by the environments that we're in. We're affected by, the if we're living in a 3-generation home, the dad and then the grandpa, we're affected by that. Okay, so when it comes to the outer, this is my way. Eckankar is one of my quickest ways of really like projecting what is within, this deep, high vibrational state of command and intent to really be a creator and not, a destroyer. I can resonate that, project that out of my body through, you could say, the navel, the whole chakra system onto the walls of my house, so that the walls of my house has an echo of higher intelligence. And that's what these mantras are for. They're higher intelligence, able to rewrite and able to like literally push out all of these lower realities of shame and desperation and trauma, that sort of, lurking energy. So I use that, but I also, through the Onkar, Satanam Suri Wahe Guru, the Maha Mantra, I also put everywhere around my house, we could say, sacred texts. For me, I am a painter, so I just let painting be everywhere around the house, almost on every wall. There's a painting behind me, but my house, there's paintings everywhere, because that is what I want to magnetize within myself. I want to magnetize, I am a creator, I am very creative, I am prolific creator, that kind of thing. So if you have on your wall a bunch of photos of like a civil war, that's probably going to magnetize in your head the trauma of that. Or if you have a picture of, this grandpa picture of them, like, and they didn't realize any sort of potential, they were kind of depressed their whole life, or alcoholics, that's going to magnetize you in a destructive reality. So whatever you're looking at, whatever, even the placement of the furniture, even the furniture and who it comes from and what it represents to you, it needs to be something that magnetizes you into, let's say, a creative reality. Okay, amongst all of the destruction and stuff like that, the home environment, even just making it as sacred, as reverent, as like a sanctuary as possible, will magnetize in your consciousness, in your subconscious when you're sleeping, realities that are more compelling and more commanding than realities of trauma and, depression and things in your house that are really just kind of amplifying that. So everything has an aura. Every image, every piece of furniture, the way it's interacting, the mirror, everything has an aura. So when we don't have that navel power, okay, when we don't have that instinctual, primal intuition, it's called the home of intuition, that navel, we have no idea why we have sort of just this feeling of just misfortune or, sabotage or, dissatisfaction with our home environment. And that can affect our children, okay? Because children are very intuitive to the home. They just know that there's something off about the home. They may have dreams, or it could affect your relationship, okay? So we want our home to contain higher frequencies. So we could play mantras all day long, art all, if you want to magnetize being creative, or if you want to be more, wise, magnetize, text of, wise statements or things of that nature. Anything that when you're, about, and your house should be just this great visualization of your potential. Okay, it should be like your house should be this great visualization into your potential, your realized potential. Your home should be full of nutrients. Your home should be full of sunlight. And if it's not, we're probably demagnetizing that within ourselves. If our house is full of just grandma's old chair that she sat in for 20 years and just stared at the wall, we're probably going to demagnetize courage, motivation, endurance. Okay, if we have in our house, let's say, a piano that was our grandma's, but our piano was like a great composer, that will probably magnetize in our house creative abundance. You know what I'm saying? If we have in our house like just some random fish on the wall or something like that from our grandpa who, did fishing, but he was just kind of like mopey about it, or, that kind of just a mopey person, that, that's going to probably magnetize that reality in the home. Okay? So we want to magnetize in the home things that are actually going to command us and give us great, you could say, great expansion of our navel. So what is the navel? It's movement. Like I said, you push it out there into the world. You push, assert yourself. It's that container where you're literally, the navel is our ability to like move things around. So our ability to reconfigure ourselves in a way that gives us more sense of spaciousness, more sense of, being up to date, being in alignment with the next frontier, being creative, being, courageous, going out there and growing. Having experiences that will require us to grow or challenge us to grow. So the very fact that, we don't think about our home as a container because we don't think about our body as a container. We don't think of that. Everything we consume, we're containing. Everything we kind of, our home especially, we're kind of containing it into what we call like our subconscious. Even TV, we're containing it into our subconscious. So I wanted to talk about this because one of my methods of really magnetizing creativity, because that's one of my things. I really want to magnetize creativity because that's just, that's my many incarnations of going out there, and studying this whole thing called life, was on the hunt for how I can be more creative. I was always on the hunt to be more creative. So to really magnetize that in my home, we don't have to be world travelers. We don't have to be, out there and here or there, up in the Himalayas or, over there in Arabia. We can magnetize it in our home. Okay. We can bring higher dimensions into our home, regardless of what kind of home it is. We just simply need to know how to push energy of, you could say, depressed, other, people living in a house depressed and stagnant and moping around kind of thing. Push it through the navel, through the Ekonkar, the Maul mantra, as well as literally project from your navel, from your intuitive, instinctual, primal knowing of what you need to do to make your house magnetize creative success. You know how to do it. Your navel is just so wanky because you don't know how to command and intend, make intentions and realize those intentions. That's why we don't really know, like, okay, what we're, our house is, okay, it's just a home. It's just a place to crash. No. It will affect our magnetism of success or the lack thereof. So it is that navel, pushing that energy, projecting it so it can prevail over any sort of, dimension within that house. Either it's a previous, people who live there, or it's a very old house, can prevail over that kind of, whatever that, stuff is. And then also putting, reconfiguring your house in a way that creates these curves, these angles, these swirls, these orientation that is just so compelling. It's so commanding. It gives such a resonance of higher intelligence, higher energy, creative life force. Our house should be this great projection of life force, and you living in that house, it should be beaming in on you. The house, you should feel it beaming in on you, life force energy to create, life force energy to create. That's what it should feel like. You should feel the gong of your house hitting you. You know what I'm saying? And then you should feel the Ekankar, the Mo mantra, really hitting the walls like a gong. So you get this wonderful, huge amplification of higher intelligence when you're aligning to your house, in your house, to yourself in that sort of manner. Okay? So, yes, that's what I wanted to talk about today.